Happy week 3. I'm at the park. It's a beautiful day. It's a little bit windy, so if you can hear any of the wind, I'm sorry. I actually tried to film week 2's reflection outside and it was way too windy. I had to cut all the footage. I'm gonna try not to be embarrassed or ashamed of the fact that I'm filming right now, even though it's not obvious and nobody cares. But anyways, let's talk about week 3. Week 3 was all about recovering a sense of power. Julia Cameron kind of goes into 5 big things that you may go through when kind of reaching new areas of yourself, especially new creative areas. And she specifically talks about anger, synchronicity, shame, criticism, and growth. I really liked this week, personally experiencing everything that she was talking about, which is always really cool. And so I want to kind of go through some of my favorite quotes, some of the things I learned, some of, the best parts. So, first, she talks about anger. And she talks about anger in many ways. Feeling angry about other people not believing in you, feeling angry about, your life or your career not panning out how you think it's going to pan out. But more specifically, she's talking about anger associated with not chasing your dreams and not reaching your full potential when you know that you can. And she says that anger is a really good place to start when you're in this recovery phase because it's a really overwhelming and intense emotion. And so it forces you to address it. And so she says on page 61, anger is fuel. Anger is meant to be listened to. Anger is meant to be respected. Why? Because anger is a map. Anger shows us what our boundaries are. Anger shows us where we want to go. It lets us see where we've been and lets us know why we haven't liked it. Anger points the way, not just the finger. In the recovery of a blocked artist, anger is a sign of health. And I thought this was really interesting. She says anger is meant to be acted upon. It's really easy for me to get caught up in anger and shame when I feel like I'm reverting. I feel like it's a little more personal if I take off my glasses. When I feel myself kind of reverting back to old patterns. And I've come to realize that while, some sort of accountability is needed, the most important part of it is acknowledging that I've grown so much that I was able to catch it this time. You don't know what an old pattern is until you've acknowledged that it's a pattern that you want to stop. It's too windy. And I've realized that I'm so critical of myself to start with that sitting in that anger and shame does nothing but make it worse. And it's more important for me to be kind to myself and acknowledge the growth first before holding myself accountable, because then I can at least acknowledge a positive out of it and I don't feel like I've completely failed myself. So that was really comforting to read. And the second thing she talks about is synchronicity. She kind of explains it as, luck or alignment. And in my understanding, she's saying that you start seeing luck when you're open to it. And then it presents itself over and over and over again until you can't deny it and you can't ignore it. And then it starts feeling like things are falling into place like they're supposed to. And while synchronicity in theory sounds great, it's also really scary because, as she says, it implies responsibility, saying you asked for something and now that you have it, it's your responsibility to take care of it. And sometimes we have so little faith in our dreams that when they actually start coming true, we push them away because we weren't expecting that. It's easier to dream about it than it is to actually accept that it's going to happen. And she compares it to spirituality and says, in my experience, we're much more afraid that there might be a God than we are that there might not be. Most of us are a lot more comfortable feeling we're not being watched too closely. And I think that's really interesting. I feel like I've always been very spiritual and very sensitive. And so when things start working out in my favor, it's typically a little scarier than it is exciting because it implies that what I want is being heard. And like she said, it's now my responsibility to take advantage of and take responsibility of the things that are being presented to me. Am I going to take the opportunities or am I going to ignore them? The dream is going to be there regardless, so I need to not ignore them. I need to take them. She says, anyone honest will tell you that possibility is far more frightening than impossibility, that freedom is far more terrifying than any prison. Fear is inevitable. She says, even the most timid life contains such moments of commitment. And that's so true. If you don't experience fears associated with chasing your dreams, you're going to face fears associated with just living day-to-day life. Or you're going to live in the shame of not going after it. And so, if fear and doubt are inevitable, why would we not choose to experience the fear and doubt that's associated with chasing our dreams and doing what feels most aligned with us? And she kind of talks about how supported we are, even though we don't know it. She uses a quote on page 63 from Shakti Gawain. Gawain? The universe will reward you for taking risks on its behalf. And then a couple pages later, she says, the universe falls in with worthy plans, and most especially with festive and expansive ones. It's our responsibility to take the first step. But as we show our bravery, the path kind of unfolds itself. On page 66, she says, we like to pretend it is hard to follow our heart's dreams. The truth is, it is difficult to avoid walking through the many doors that will open. Turn aside your dream and it will come back to you again. Get willing to follow it again, and a second mysterious door will swing open. And this specifically, I wrote down and highlighted in my journal because this is like the biggest takeaway that I got from this. A dream is not something you go after once, it's something that you work towards every single day. It's something that may change and evolve as you change and evolve. It's something that you never truly figure out, you just experience it as it comes. And although it may be scary to put ourselves out there, you never experience that fear, it's just going to manifest into something else, some other intense emotion that you aren't going to be able to ignore forever. So you might as well address the fear and allow it to push you and to hold you accountable instead of pushing it away and pretending like it doesn't exist, because then you're just going to continue being fearful and continue being angry with yourself. She says right under that previous quote, we say we are scared by failure, but what frightens us more is the possibility of success. Yeah, I know. The third thing she talks about, obviously, so far we've done anger and synchronicity. The third thing she talks about is shame. She says shame can come in many forms, and she focuses a lot on personal shame and self inflicted shame, and that's what I really worry about and what I experience the most. Obviously, not everybody understands me or gets me or supports me, but I have a really good track record of surrounding myself with supportive people. And so the shame that I feel day to day is shame that I inflict on myself. Do I know them? She says, shaming someone is an attempt to prevent the person from behaving in a way that embarrasses us. Making a piece of art may feel a lot like telling a family secret. Secret telling, by its very nature, involves shame and fear. It asks the question, what will they think of me once they know this? This is a frightening question, particularly if we have ever been made to feel ashamed for our curiosities and explorations. Art brings things to light. It illuminates us. It sheds light on our lingering darkness. It casts a beam into the heart of our own darkness and says, see? I like this because art is very vulnerable. It's vulnerable because it comes from a place of us that we can't describe other than making said art. And at the end of the day, it's important to protect our art. You have to know when you're a little fragile and your art is not ready to be shared yet. But you also have to know when to take a step and when it's appropriate and when you're ready to share it. Oh my gosh, I totally know them. It's not embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It's ironic that I'm less scared to film myself while talking about being ashamed of creating. I should start taking my own advice. Okay, let's keep on rolling. I've recently, in the past year, come to terms with the fact that I have a pretty severe avoidant attachment style. Avoidant and anxious attachment, but mostly avoidant. I first kind of learned about this when going to therapy. As the kind of relationships in my life have evolved over the past few years, I've become even more aware of it. And so this next part really called me out. It said, many artists begin a piece of work, get well along in it, and then find, as they near completion, that the work seems mysteriously drained of merit. It's no longer worth the trouble. To therapists, this surge of sudden disinterest is a routine coping device employed to deny pain and ward off vulnerability. She says many people call it detachment, but it's actually numbing out. She says a lifetime of experience in which needs for recognition are routinely dishonored teaches a young child that putting anything out for attention is a dangerous act. Now, I resonated with this not because I have an unsupportive family, because I do not. I have a very supportive family, a family who has supported me and believed in me way longer and way stronger than I have ever believed in myself. But I do think that as women, we're taught from a very young age that we're supposed to be quiet and kind and generous and selfless and be content. And while I think all of those are important qualities, it's made me feel like putting myself out there is not only dangerous, but also embarrassing. And since when has trying and being confident been embarrassing? What am I so worried about? I put myself out there authentically. The people who are supposed to understand me and supposed to will know me and understand me. It's not embarrassing. We're all trying. Some of us are just doing it publicly and some of us are doing it privately. She says on the next page, often we are wrongly shamed as creatives. From the shaming, we learn that we are wrong to create. Once we learn this lesson, we forget it instantly. Buried under it doesn't matter. The shame lives on, waiting to attach itself to our new efforts. The very act of attempting to make art creates shame. And this is a great way of explaining how shame kind of has a snowball effect. Something happens that makes us ashamed early on in life, and then we hide it, we forget about it, and it builds up, it gets bigger and bigger, and then something small happens and all the shame comes rushing back. And she says this is why artists may feel shame at admitting their dreams, which I've definitely felt. Shame is re-triggered in us as adults because our internal artist is always our creative child. Because of this, making a piece of art may cause us to feel shame. And so, as artists, we must learn to be very self protective, learning where and when to seek out the right criticism. Now, on page 70, she says, as artists, we cannot control all the criticism we will receive. We cannot make our professional critics more healthy or more loving or more constructive than they are. But we can learn to comfort our artist child over unfair criticism. We can learn to find friends with whom we can safely vent our pain. We can learn not to deny and stuff our feelings when we have been artistically savaged. And I love that. I think I've spent so long trying to get rid of shame when in reality, I just need to comfort myself through it. You know, there's never going to be a time in my life where I'm not ashamed of something or I'm not carrying some level of shame, but I can acknowledge it when it starts to build up and I can say, hey, this feeling is valid, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not worthy of stuff. It doesn't mean that it's true. An emotion can be very intense and feel very real and still not imply that we're doing anything wrong. It's just part of the human experience. And she says when this happens to her being Julia Cameron, the author, she says, I do not tell myself it doesn't matter. I tell my artist self, you will heal. Which now, obviously, we're talking about criticism, which is number 4. And this next quote that I want to share is on page 73. And it's pretty long, but I feel like it's important that I share the whole entire quote. Many blocked people are actually very powerful and creative personalities who have been made to feel guilty about their own strengths and gifts. Without being acknowledged, they are often used as batteries by their families and friends who feel free to both use their creative energies and disparage them. When these blocked artists strive to break free of their dysfunctional systems, they are often urged to be sensible when such advice is not appropriate for them. Made to feel guilty for their talents, they often hide their own light under a bushel for fear of hurting others. Instead, they hurt themselves. And essentially, the biggest thing I got from this chapter is chasing your dreams is such a big task that someone is going to get hurt in the process. But it can either be yourself by ignoring that you have those dreams in the first place, or it can be other people being disappointed in you for what you've chosen to do with your life. And while it should never be your goal to disappoint people, if disappointment is inevitable, then make other people feel it. Which brings me to the next quote, which is on page 75, where she says, I'm asking you to baby yourself. We believe that to be artists, we must be tough, cynical, and intellectually chilly. Leave that to the critics. As a creative being, you will be more productive when coaxed than when bullied. And that goes back to what I was saying before. And that brings us into growth, where she says, growth is an erratic forward movement, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Creative recovery is a healing process. You are capable of great things on Tuesday, but on Wednesday you may slide backward. Very often, a week of insights will be followed by a week of sluggishness. Growth comes with being kind to yourself in small, concrete ways. It also is allowing help where it is needed, making a commitment to yourself and to the things that make you feel good, even if they don't feel productive. She says, there is a big difference between being helped and being treated as though we are helpless. I really liked that. I thought the difference between being helped and being treated as though we're helpless is a really good distinction. And that brings us to the end of week 3. Tomorrow I start week 4. Tomorrow is also my 23rd birthday. So it's kind of a crazy time. I'm really enjoying this so far. It is a commitment, it's taking at least an hour a day. I'm going from bottling up my emotions to forcing myself to face them first thing in the morning. And that is something that is kind of lifting a weight off of my shoulders that I didn't know was there. I'm about to read chapter 4. I have not read it so far, but it is about recovering a sense of integrity. So I'm excited to get deeper into it. Once again, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to keep on going about these videos. I'm having a lot of fun filming them, and I appreciate you listening. And I hope that the wind wasn't too loud. But I love you.